So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay. And actually, after a few recording sessions, I finally reached the end of my backlog. So while this may be a few weeks into the future, I will be looking for new replays in the interim, because this is pretty much the last one that I will be doing from the current batch, because the others are either a little bit on the small side or are maps that would be repeated. For instance, there is another TOL FALAS map that I actually was sent, but I elected to use this one because this one actually has a slightly more clear theme. The other one is a complete mess of factions, whereas at least with this one, even though it isn't exactly lore friendly, I can at least give some kind of explanation for why everyone is on the teams that they are on. Regardless, we are of course on TOL FALAS, which is certainly an old favourite of mine, just because it's one of those cityscape maps that doesn't devolve into being the same battle over and over again, much like the, well, in a different way certainly, to the Merlond siege that we saw just previously, where every siege of Merlond tends to work out in that way, because from the defender's point of view it is by far the most efficient place to stand, even if it is also by far the least interesting. With TOL FALAS there does tend to be a little bit of variation, which is always good. Although to be fair, in the last couple of battles we have started to see a bit of a trend emerge. We shall see if that continues to be the case. But the theme for today is that the North has been conquered. The entirety of the North has fallen under Sauron's sway, and the free peoples of Middle-earth have fled to TOL FALAS, at least the ones that still remain. And it's going to be quite interesting, but we'll go through the attackers first and foremost. 5 attacking armies, and of course Angmar, played by 99999, etc. 1. He's playing as Angmar, and Angmar of course would be the reason for why the North has been lost to darkness, so they will be heading up the assault. Blackwatch Legion, very useful in a siege situation such as this of course. TOL FALAS has got many choke points in which they could be very, very useful, as well as of course absorbing arrow fire, because TOL FALAS also has many places where archers can be truly deadly, and with their massive armour and shield value that won't be such a problem for them. In a similar vein, Guardians of Khazad-Dum, a very tanky unit of line infantry. They may lack the damage that other highly rated line infantry units have, such as the Blackwatch Legion and the Numenorean cohort. But even so, for Angmar, especially for an Orcish faction, they're a really, really good centre to your line, because they can take a good deal of punishment. We also have some Witch-Realm pikemen over here, not upgraded, but not the most important thing as long as you can field them. They're still heavily armoured. They're very similar in many ways to the Uruk-hai pikemen, albeit you can bring less of them as Angmar than you can as Isengard, but still really good for shoring up the line later on in a siege such as this. Some Witch-Realm Inquisitors just to prevent any sort of sally out, which, considering one of the defenders, is a very wise move, I must say. A nice unit of melee knights. Trolls of Angmar and Trolls of Gundabad, so some heavy bludgeons here that can be used. Trolls of course can be slightly fragile depending on the situation you commit them to, so it'll be interesting to see how Angmar decide to utilise them. And we have a catapult and technically another piece of artillery really in the Witchers. Have to keep an eye on them, because if I zoom in on them when they fire, it's been proven on this map that it can cause a crash. There's probably some Snaga in there as well. One of the northern kingdoms that has fallen and now is forced to march alongside their hated enemy is Dale, played by Mevin. He's got some Dalian spearmen here with the upgrade, so Dale of course well known for being a faction that can take a bit of a beating, which is useful in an offensive siege like this. Dalian spearmen, just like any other line spear, won't really do a ton of damage to enemy infantry because of the malus, but their ability to hold the line and keep the assault going is just as important really, especially when a unit like the Barding Herd here can do the damage for you. Nice AP phalanx, and they're tankier than most halberds as well, with their heavy lamella armour and their round shields that they wear on their backs. Lake Town Infantry, so they are an archer first and foremost, but they don't have much ammunition, and when all is said and done they become a unit of light line infantry. But yeah, just a method of saving money here, I would say, for Dale, so they can have a really large skirmish force but without having to spend overly high amounts of money on them. Having said that, they've gone for 3 units of the Bardian Marksmen as well as some Blackshot Dragon Slayers and some Dalian Royal Guard, so a huge skirmish presence really from Dale. Hopefully their allies haven't gone too heavy in the archers as well, otherwise all of that could prove to be a little bit of a waste. We shall see. We have Rhun, played by the Warlord, who has got a ton of Eastron clansmen on the front line with the armour upgrades, useful in a siege like this again because they are tankier than standard militia, perform better than standard militia in melee in every capacity, but they're not overly expensive because at the end of the day they are still militia. Some Eastron Guard in behind, maybe not what I would bring in a siege like this because they're just too fragile to be worthwhile, but they can still do a decent amount of damage late on as long as they are spared the attentions of the enemy skirmishers. Got some flag room here. AP, always going to be useful against armoured factions, of which there is a couple on the defence. We shall see if the flag room is sufficient to deal with them. Upgraded Eastron crossbows, so the golden armour is certainly out in force here for the Warlord. And these crossbows should be pretty good, to be honest, at dealing good damage to the enemy. I'd keep them back for a little while, let Dale handle the skirmish stuff first, and then bring them in later when the defenders can't really answer them. Classic way to use crossbows in a siege because it works. Lokgamp Brim, another halberd unit on the front line, similar to the Barding Herd. Not quite as good as them, I would have to say. Their armour is not quite as thick, they're not quite as tanky, but ultimately both halberds will still perform much the same in terms of damage. Scion Rim, nice heavy unit of spears, which can be used obviously to be the real hard centre to your line. Baltroth Tribesmen, so some more javelins there. And finally some Carmel's Chosen, which is where the General's Bodyguard is. Another faction from the north, Rhudaur, one of Angmar's long-time vassals, so they'll probably get preferential treatment in this new dominion. We've got Gimli, son of Gloin, who has got some Arthedain Berserkers, he's got some Rhudaur Marksmen, Essenmore's Troll Hunters, so obviously a lot of throwing projectiles for Rhudaur, really useful in a siege like this as long as they are deployed at the right time. Some Dunman Spearmen are in here as well, and some more Rhudaur Marksmen, the rest of his army up on this little hill. Arthedain Pikemen, really big fan of them, some more Dunman Pikes along with them. Some Rhudaur Clansmen and some Rhudaur Swordsmen as well. I imagine the rest of his army has probably got some rangers in it, probably some Trollshore Axe Throwers, the usual suspects I would imagine. And then finally, while they must have put up some brave resistance, Arthedain's resistance has ultimately been broken. Thick Dick is going to be playing as them. He's got some fully upgraded Evendim Spearmen. Again, they're a little bit deceptive, I would suggest, considering the how they look. They look sort of like upper end line spears when they're actually still militia. So do bear that in mind. But they can still hold the line very well. They're one of the better militia spears in the game, if not the best. Civilians are back here. Wardens of the North, obviously a fantastic unit of armour-piercing archers, especially when you consider the fact that they're heavy swordsmen in melee. Some unupgraded Arthedain pikemen. Very unsurprising to see Arthedain bring their pikes, as well as some Numinas gate guards as well. Some dismounted Fornoster Raid Knights, heavy swordsmen, very nice. Dismounted Knights for Numinous as well, a bodyguard line infantry unit. Fully upgraded Arthedain men-at-arms. Then finally at the back, personal favourite of mine, Dunedain Peacekeepers. Will be good at sort of hacking and slashing their way through more lightly armoured targets. Having said that, on this side of things, lightly armoured targets is the last thing they're likely to encounter, because Khazad-Dum are here. Balin's expedition ultimately had to pull back from Moria, and they are seeking refuge on TOL FALAS as Angmar sweeps through Middle-earth like a plague. Warriors of Khazad-Dum on the front, they're the basic unit of line infantry for Khazad-Dum, but that still puts them far and above anything that Rhudaur and Arthedain have, who are their likely opponents over here. Rhudaur's AP could be a bit of a concern, but honestly Khazad-Dum should be fairly comfortable against Arthedain from an infantry perspective. It'll be interesting to see how Arthedain choose to approach that. They've got some unupgraded 4th Legion Shield Guard, fantastic at holding the line. They're not quite as OP as they once were in a previous incarnation of the game, where they didn't have the Spear Malice applied to them, and they were just better than the standard line infantry in every single way. But they're still fantastic at holding the line, of course. Dwarven Spears are still going to be better against infantry than most human spears. Sentries of Khazad-Dum, so some basic Dwarven Pikes on the front as well, just to help shore things up. A 2nd unit of 4th Legion. Some more sentries. This choke point is going to see a lot of action, I would imagine. He's gone for 3 units of Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, has Tsunami. And that is, that's going to do a lot of damage. I mean, they're not armour-piercing axe throwers. It's just a matter of high base damage, but for breaking up the phalanxes of both Rhudaur and for Arthedain, they could be an absolutely devastating unit, and then of course their AP infantry and melee as well. So I agree actually with Tsunami bringing 3 of them. It could backfire because they're very expensive to do this, but if you're going to do it, now is the time. 2nd Legion Axe Guard, again unupgraded for that extra AP. Sons of the Fallen, who make for one of the tankiest front lines in the game. And then the 3 bodyguard units, the Legion Bodyguard, the AP Guards of Khazad-Dum, and then the 3 hit point Mithril Guard. Those obviously had their roles reversed in the most recent patch, which was a few months ago at this point. But yes, the Mithril Guard are now the 3 hit point version, and the Guards of Khazad-Dum are the AP version. Legion Bodyguard are like a sort of happy middle ground that's slightly cheaper. And that is pretty much it. I think actually there are a few units up on the high ground as well. Indeed there are. Unsurprising to see the Dwarven Archers up here, the Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum. the Iron Watch of Miramir, which is where Balin is actually, who could be absolutely devastating in a choke point such as this, and then Orc Hunters as well. So yeah, not the most appealing attacking position for Arthedain, but it's the job they've been given, and ultimately it will be more beneficial for their team to go that way than to just pile in on these bridges, because over here, the welcoming arms of Filler, and who is playing as Imladris, is going to be waiting. Imladris sentries on the front line, a fantastic unit of Elven Pikes of course, the Gwaith'i Arthand, one of the tankiest spears in the game, Gwaith'i Myrdain as well, the Zebras as they have become affectionately known, Elder Enway Spearmen, God Helim Einauer, we've got the Broinin River Wards as well, so yeah, all of the high quality Imladris units are on display, as perhaps you would expect in a siege such as this, where you have a lot of money to play with. Noratirno Warriors and Elder Enway Archers deploying their stakes over here. It'll be very interesting to see how the Elder Enway Lancers get on. It's not the Gwaith'i Rhudaur, so something like the Witchrealm Inquisitors will make mincemeat of them, really. Having said that, they are still Elder Enway Lancers. They can do a lot of damage to the right targets, but on their lonesome, perhaps less so. Then up on the high ground, we have some Noratirno Warriors again, some Swords of Rivendell, who are not upgraded, but still nice unit of light line infantry. Then several units of the Spears of Rivendell, who are actually AP now. Kind of an interesting unit. I mean, the AP does make them much more useful than they once were. I'm still not entirely sold on them as a unit, to be honest with you, but we'll see how well they can do in this situation here. The armour upgrade applied to them as well. And then finally, we have Khand, played by Y2K86. Interesting to see Khand here. I guess they chose the Blue Wizard's bargain, perhaps at exactly the wrong time, because it looks as though Evil's final victory is upon us. We've got Brotherhood of the Shadows here, we've got Nurad Footmen, Brotherhood of the Spear with their Yaris as well. Nurad Stormguard in there, Nomadic Infantry, a bit of a blob here certainly, but all of the usual suspects for Khand are there, except for maybe the Nurad Halberds. There's the Stormguard, the Brotherhood units, the Nurad Line Infantry, the Nomadic Archers, so yeah, some of the better units. I'd imagine the Halberds are still present, and indeed there they are with all their G Halberds. More Brotherhood units, including Brotherhood of the Sword and Axe, Veriac Bowmen. Of course, Khand, especially when they're given money to play with, can field all of their elites relatively easily, in comparison to someone like Imladris or Khazad-Dum, who might still have money worries, we shall see. Veriac Cataphracts are here, as well as some Brotherhood of the Bow, so nice to have some more cavalry units to ride with the Elder Enway Lancers. And yeah, without further ado, let's begin. I'm actually not going... Well, actually, I think I will make a little cut here as we advance towards... Cause I'm not sure how the cavalry is going to be used, but this may very well be quite a short cut, we shall see. Okay, so we're going to rejoin here, I think, because it's only a matter of time before Rhudaur's presence on this front line is going to get some sort of response, you would imagine, from the Elves of Imladris, but certainly the cavalry as well. It's sort of running out of room to manoeuvre here. That is an issue with bringing cavalry on a map like this. Like, you can end up bottled up. If you're not intent on defending this front village here, then cavalry can leave itself with little room to manoeuvre, and you may instead have to utilise your cavalry by just keeping them back until the very end and then try and break up the enemy that way, which is a way of looking at it. You can do that, and it is a very valid method to pursue. The Veriac Cataphracts in particular, because of their status as knights, would be fantastic for that sort of thing, but we shall see. Rhudaur marksmen are on the way forward, however, from Gimli, son of Gloin, and you would have to say that this will get some sort of response from Imladris. I'm actually having a look over here. The Wardens of the North are coming forward. Now, this is the sort of unit that the Orc Hunters should already be in range of, and considering they're coming forward on their own, not only are the AP Archers something you want to shut down as the Dwarves, because it's one of Arthedain's few genuinely scary units against you, but also it's such an expensive unit. Yes, they're multiple HP, but 3 units of Orc Hunters shooting them down. I mean, Orc Hunters are very similar to entry-level Elven Archers, which is a pretty good marker. All 3 of them firing into these Dunedain would be enough to start shaving down a unit pretty quickly. So it'll be interesting to see how this works. I mean, Arthedain on their lonesome, of course, are going to really struggle against Khazad-Dum, to be honest with you. Like, Rhudaur needs to send some sort of support over. In fact, it's Dale that's coming over here, so they are going to get some help. And Dale, good at holding the line, but betraying their long-time Dwarven friends. What a tragedy. Here you can see the Rhudaur marksmen are opening up with their arrows, but of course, considering the height discrepancy that's between the units, Noratirno warriors are firing, but several units of Noratirno warriors are firing, so in a way, while they are obviously getting absolutely eviscerated here, the Rhudaur marksmen, I think actually as well, the Rhudaur swordsmen are being focused down as well, which is good. These Noratirno warriors can't really afford to be firing at the same unit, and they aren't. You don't want to be wasting all your ammunition on a single unit from 2 units of Noratirno warriors. Of course, the benefit to the Norutino warriors is they're pretty damn good in melee as well. So they have that going for them, certainly. They're also going after, is that Dunman Spearmen they're shooting? That would definitely be a waste. But yeah, these archers at this point are barely even worth worrying about. The unit has been shaved down so significantly. Bit of a surprise that Rhudaur are the ones taking point over here, to be honest with you, because of the three factions that are going to be attacking over here, between themselves, Rhun and Angmar, they are by far and away the most fragile to arrow fire. Well, maybe not by far and away. Rhun have got decent armour, but it's not amazing. But Rhudaur armour is one of their lowest priorities, to be honest with you, and when they're put in front of elven archers such as this, it can be a real problem for them. Khand are also banking up on the front line. The men of the Blue Wizards, as they must now be known, I suppose. Ones in the north, but still, Arthedain, you can see they're sort of probing. The Dunedain Troll Slayers do come forward, but again, that is definitely the sort of unit that the Orc Hunters should be shooting, to be honest with you, because they're arguably even more dangerous because they do their damage more quickly. They're armor piercing in melee as well, and they're more fragile. So really, all around, they're a fantastic target to go after. Probably the single best target the dwarves can try and shut down in the Arthedain roster, to be honest with you, because up close and personal, even Arthedain's most elite infantry is not going to be a problem for the dwarves to deal with. Most of Arthedain's units do tend to be a little bit more defensive in nature as well. Like Arthedain men-at-arms are going to have a real trouble having any sort of impact on the dwarven infantry here. Lake Town infantry marching their way across. Daily and Spearmen are back there. We shall see though. Will the grit of the men of the north be enough to overcome the dwarves, I wonder? Rhudaur marksmen still trying to impact some of these units over here. I doubt they're going to do much, but I mean they are getting some hits here on the Norutino warriors. An annoyance at best, but still an annoyance that could yield some kills. We shall see. Khand and Imladris sharing the load over here. Combination of Nurad footmen and Nurad halberds being joined on the front line by some slightly more skill-focused Swords of Rivendell. So they've got everything they need, really. AP, the only thing that's really lacking is pikes. The Angmar Catapult starting to open up. Going after the Hwacher, actually, which has managed to get over here. I mean, the Hwacher can do massive damage, actually, to this blob, and you can see that Y2K has exactly that in mind. I mean, if the Catapult went on to standard shot and started trying to snipe the Hwacher out, it could be in trouble, but the Nurad footmen here, lucky that those missed, but now the Eastern Rockets hitting this area, going after the Blackwolds, the Guardians of Khazad-Dum. Actually quite fortunate here that none of the trolls have been hit. You can actually see that the Hwacher does do less damage because some of those trolls did get hit directly and they didn't die. So it is it is interesting to see the Hwacher's different. It's rare that you see the damage values of an artillery piece actually have an impact, but the Hwacher is such a one because it has damage low enough to the point where the very tankiest units can actually survive it. So the trolls there taking hits but not outright dying, but you can see there that volley did do some good damage. Not massive damage to a single unit, but spread out nicely across several targets, and now another volley coming in, and they may as well keep going after this blob because the Guardians of Khazad-Dum are packed enough but also spread out to the point where they're going to hit them. And this is going to be good damage. The Guardians of Khazad-Dum are a useful unit later on in this fight. One of the tankier units, if not the tankiest unit of line infantry over here, outside of elite stuff like the Blackwatch Legion. So some good hits happening there. Even stuff like the Snaga Stalkers, I mean, anything that you hit with the Hwacher is good because you're doing so much damage across a large area. Very, very nice indeed. The Witches are still over here. What happened to the Catapult? Where's that going? It's getting a little bit closer. It's wanting to get into a position where it can actually hit the Hwacher. Meanwhile, over here, the dwarves are now moving forward. The Orc Hunters are firing away at something. They're going after Lake Town Infantry. They really should have gone after the Dunedain before, I think. But they are shooting now, which is nice. 4th Legion Shield Guard blocking the way. I mean, civilians are obviously going to have no impact whatsoever against heavy dwarven soldiers, and civilians will get absolutely ripped asunder. Evandem Spears with their armour upgrade will be good at absorbing ammunition, actually. But they won't be good in melee against warriors of Khazad-Dum. It'll be a very one-sided affair indeed. Well, what have we got over here? Evandem Spearmen, balance of forces are evenly matched. Are you sure? I think that will turn around as the 4th Legion Shield Guard have an impact. The sentries of Khazad-Dum are coming forward. 2 units of them. 3 units of them, in fact. I think it's a little bit late for that, though, to be honest. I mean, if they wanted to hear the attackers, they could spill over this defence, but I don't think they have enough actually close enough by. Perhaps because they don't want special targets to be focused down by the Orc Hunters. That will give the dwarves the opportunity perhaps to get these pikes into position. The Lake Town Infantry are trying to shoot sentries as they move forward, which is fair enough. There are very few targets in the Khazad-Dum army that are going to take a massive amount of damage to basic archers. The regular pikes are probably one of the better targets, certainly. And there you can see the Orc Hunters firing from on high, but it's on basic units, so to be fair, Dale and Arthedain won't be too concerned about that. They will lose the first wave, but as long as they keep sending units forward, keep putting up the pressure, eventually they'll run out of ammo, the dwarves, and then the defence will start to become a little bit more dodgy. Meanwhile, what happened to the Watcher? They retreat it? I think they probably did, didn't they? Where'd it go? It's interesting. Where did it go? Is that up here, perhaps? Yep, there it is. They're repositioning it up onto the high ground. They've still got a pretty decent fort. I mean, if they fired off down here into the Runic army, I mean, they'd hit several units and do pretty decent damage, I have to say. So, the Watcher definitely a good pick so far. Although Angmar, if they were on standard shot, they could have actually sniped it out by now. But that opportunity may very well have passed them by. They could still move it forward, but at this point they would be in full range of all of the Elven and Khandish skirmishers. So maybe not the best idea at this stage, because you would certainly get them, certainly be a problem for them. Meanwhile, Nomadic Infantry, they're pretty much built from the ground up to be an archer that goes after other archers at range, and then when all is said and done, they're a decent makeshift line infantry unit. So they're actually one of the better units for dealing with an annoyance like the Goblin Trackers, because they will rack up an impressive kill count at range because they're a much, much better archer unit. I think they're trying to go after actually the Noratuno Warriors, but yeah, these Goblin Trackers, they're doing their thing, they're getting into a position, firing arrows downrange, forcing a response, but ultimately going to be limited effectiveness. To be fair though, Dunman Spearmen are moving forward. The Khandish player a little bit caught on their heels there. I mean, the Nomadic Infantry would beat the Dunman Spearmen in melee, certainly. But they are forcing the Nomadic Infantry back a little bit, and they do actually end up picking one off. At the loss of, well, two actually, at the loss of 0 Dunman Spearmen, so it's obviously not a match-defining moment, that, but still. It sets the tone, perhaps. The Watcher is now in position, the deadly, deadly rockets. You need to make sure that you're not actually in the way of your own artillery there, otherwise you will get hit by them. Eastron crossbows are moving forward. This really is the sort of target you need to be skirmishing down. They may have the armour upgrade, but still, in comparison to crossbows like those from Cardlan and Erebor, they are still far too fragile to withstand Elven arrow fire, even with the golden scale mail that they have on, and the Elven archers are focusing them down, which is good to see. Arthedain men-at-arms are routing. Sons of the Fallen was committed forward actually here from Khazad-Dum, so that really is a statement of intent by them. Wardens of the North are firing forward. What are they actually going after? They're actually going after the pikes and not the Sons of the Fallen, which is a surprising thing considering the shields are now pointing the wrong way. Those armor-piercing arrows could be really good at hitting the backs of those Sons of the Fallen rather than the pikes. The pikes are something you can deal with more standard archers. Now it looks like they have changed their target, which is good. Yeah, Arthedain's basic units are really struggling on the front line. There was nothing of any real quality, and ultimately being that stingy has cost Arthedain pretty drastically here, you'd have to say. I mean, even Dunedain Peacekeepers, they may not be, they may be more designed to deal with lighter infantry units, but their quality would have been welcome on the front line. You can see over here, stuff like Evendim Spearmen, again, it can be misleading, the fact that they have this full plate armour. They are not on the same level as something like the fully upgraded Gondor Spearmen. They are not on the same level as basic units of line spears from the Western Kingdoms. They are a militia unit. The armour doesn't make a difference there, and their stats being ruthlessly exposed by a proper spear unit in many ways, the 4th Legion Shield Guard. The Dwarves pulling back now, which I think they've earned every right to do. They have defended the bridge and they've won that battle. There are quite a few dead dwarves over here though, so it's not a complete loss, to be fair, for Arthedain and Dale. They have done damage to the dwarves as a result of their forward-thinking nature. But of course the main event for the dwarves is going to happen in this valley here, when they can use their reclaimers perhaps to full effect. And up here you can see the Orc Hunters just biding their time, still have a bit of ammunition. I like this from Tsunami. He's not just thoughtlessly dumping all of his ammunition all at once. He's trying to spread it out a little bit, trying to go after the right sort of targets. And Evendim Spears and Lake Town Infantry are beneath Khazad-Dum's notice, really. Meanwhile, Nurad footmen moving forward. We can actually see the unit has gone forwards onto the attack here. The Swords of Rivendell moving forwards, perhaps as a result of the crossbows getting into a nasty position. I mean, these Swords of Rivendell will butcher their way through Dunman Spearmen. They may be the most basic unit Imladris can field, but it's far and away more so than the most basic unit Rhudaur can field. Crossbow bolts flying overhead. The catapult now bombarding the area. Going after the back here. Ooh, very, very fortunate there, Khan. I think, yeah, one of their cataphracts did end up falling, but that is the target of the artillery, interestingly enough. I mean, it might be better off going after blobs of infantry, we shall see. Nomadic Infantry getting into position. The crossbows were, after all, shooting into this position here. The Hwachers trying to get into place. The Hwacher could do so much damage to that area over there, and surely Y2K knows that. Like, usually this is the sort of scene where you don't want to use a catapult because everything's so spread out, but it's perfect for a Hwacher. We'll see if he concurs. Rhudaur swordsmen moving to the front line, as are the Eastron clansmen. They're getting shot in the side as well now by Rhudaur marksmen, so you'd have to say the days of these swords of Rivendell are most certainly numbered. To what extent, we shall have to wait and see. There's still much more for the attackers to give over here. Arrows being utilised, trying to go after the probably the Eastron crossbows. They need some sort of pressure applied to it after all. The elves screaming Illidan, which is definitely a sign that they are opening up with their archers. Nice to see. Again, they do need to keep some of their ammunition back, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. The Hwacher, is it going to fire? I mean, he's pushed his artillery into this position, so I mean, at this point you kind of need to use it, because pushing it back again, Medieval 2 artillery can be real awkward. Like, once you put it into a position, sometimes it's there for good, and here we can see the Hwacher is being utilised. Marvellous. What are they going to shoot though? Are they going to shoot this area, or are they going to go down into there? I think they are going to shoot in a more linear fashion, you would have to say. May as well dump the ammunition of it now. The longer you wait for it, after all, the more it can be wasted. Several hits there at the back. They're managing to hit these units in behind as well. Snaga Stalkers, Eastron Clansmen. None of these units are particularly elite, but they are hitting these units, getting kills on several of them. They've actually done a lot of damage, to be fair, against these units over here. Not much in the way of friendly fire either. The Rhudaur swordsmen are pushing through though, so the Hwacher needs to use all of its ammunition quickly, because Rhudaur sees the danger that it represents, and they're trying to push through the swords of Rivendell, and they're going to inevitably try to get into melee with them. Norrötuno warriors need to be careful as well, because if they come at the wrong time, then this Hwacher is going to hit mostly its own men, which would be a true tragedy, of course. And the Norrötuno warriors are moving forward, and they just managed to get out of the way just in time. And this is what I was talking about from Y2K. This is a really good position for them to target. Not only are they more elite units, but they're so spread out, they're going to hit something regardless of what they do end up getting. They tag the Gambrim, they tag the Eastron Guard, both units of them in fact. And if there's more where that came from, they should absolutely keep up the pressure. Meanwhile, the dwarves continuing to be utterly victorious over here. The warriors of Khazad-Dum very depleted at this stage, but of course with the support of the archers, those Lake Town infantry are going to struggle. Finally, we are seeing some Dunedain on the front line as well, the peacekeepers, but they immediately turn tail and run when they come under arrow fire, which ironically is going to expose them to the damage even more, because their shields won't be coming into play. Dale, I think, need to be the ones to take a bit of responsibility here, because they've got the units that would be better in this situation, to be honest, now that the Arthedain man-at-arms are gone. The Dalian spears that are upgraded would be really good to send forward in the vanguard for me. Yeah, and the Lake Town infantry are wavering. They need to do something here. I mean, ultimately, this is one army, Khazad-Dum, and they're not committing forward their full force. Their elites aren't here. I think Arthedain and Dale do need to be a little bit bolder for me if they are to have success in this fight, because as it stands, Khazad-Dum are probably sitting back, satisfied over a job well done. Wardens of the North are coming forward as well, but again, the Wardens of the North are using their ammunition certainly on units that are not the creme de la creme that Khazad-Dum can field, which, you know, really, your bodyguard armor-piercing archers should be focusing on the most high priority targets. Meanwhile, Angmar are now moving forward, so this is a little bit more like it, perhaps more swords of Rivendell coming in, arrows being loosed, but of course Angmar are much better placed to deal with arrow fire such as this than their allies over here, and there's also still crossbows back here, cranking their crossbows. They didn't take that much damage, to be fair, from the archers or the Hwacher. They managed to avoid most of that, as it turns out. The crossbows are actually shooting over their own men into this infantry behind. They shouldn't be doing that, really. They should be going after stuff like the nomadic units back here. Forward come the trolls. So yeah, this front line's days are most certainly numbered. There's still archers down there on the low ground, presumably shooting across the river, or perhaps up onto the high ground. Dunman spears moving forward, so they've got a lot a lot of chaff that they can still utilise. The Rhudaur Axemen will be very, very weak to any arrow fire that they perceive. But this front line has just been run through. The defenders are a little bit guilty there of underselling their defence. They just didn't really commit forward enough. And now with the trolls coming forward, they're going into the phalanx of the Nurad halberds. To be fair, the AP of the halberds will actually be somewhat useful against them, but they're going to need to overwhelm the trolls quickly, I would suggest. And the defenders caught on their heels yet again, I have to say, over on this side of things. Not really prepared for the all-out offensive that Angmar indulged in there. Forward come Norotino warriors, Spears of Rivendell also on the offensive. Nomadic Infantry firing down into the low ground. What are they actually going after? They're going after the Rhudaur marksmen. Interesting. I mean, they're better at skirmishing than any of those attacking archers, certainly, but you could say they definitely need to be shooting into the side of this formation over here, especially going after something like the Rhudaur Axeman. Up on the high ground, the Variag bowmen are doing their thing. No rangers, interestingly enough, for any of the defenders. Three factions that lack them entirely. In Imladris, Khazad-Dum and Khan. Variag bowmen, though, occupying a position that rangers, we've seen them occupy this position in the past. Of course, rangers not long for the game, not in the amounts that we've seen them anyway. The next patch will see the removal of the body piercing mechanic from the foot rangers. Interesting to see what they use to replace that. I think armour piercing would actually be less obnoxious, to be honest with you. And it would still give rangers a reason to be picked as light archers that can do high damage. Rhudaur Marksman pushing through, not Arksman. But shutting down the archers, their main danger here was the archers, and the Rhudaur Marksmen getting up close and personal, swinging their axes with reckless abandon. Yeah, and the defenders were not prepared for this at all over here, and they're being made to pay for it by the attackers very, very nicely. This is what you like to see from the attackers, not backwards and coming forwards. When they see an opportunity to display their full might, they have taken it, and the defenders have been left very, very flat-footed. The trolls, to be fair, are largely gone at this point. All of the armour piercing from the Nurads have made their impact felt, but the trolls have done their job already. They've split the defence right down the middle. All of these Rhudaur units moving in. I mean, to be fair, a lot of these Rhudaur units are going to be very vulnerable to the archers up on the hill, including the Brotherhood of the Bow up there, who could be used for their mobility later on, of course. Norotino warriors moving in. The attackers need to keep up the pressure at this point. I would say go all in, to be honest with you. Just keep sending forward really strong units. Knock this defence down. Don't give them a chance to get set again. There are Blackwolds over here, which would be a good target for the defenders to go after. Engaged in close melee with the Nurads as they swing their halberds. Yeah, Rhudaur doing a good job over here, but they're getting shot up pretty badly at this point. And between the Bruinen River Wards and Brotherhood of the Spear, they are at least going to stop the attackers from making any more progress. More units are going to be required, however, but a lot of the reinforcements are a long way off at this point. So they've done the first part right, but this is somewhere where we often see teams come unstuck. Reinforcements are making their way forward now, which is good, but a lot of these reinforcements are quite far back. They're not sort of ready. Will they have what it takes to keep this attack going? Variag cataphracts are moving in. I mean, that's questionable, because they're only ever going to get bogged down in melee against spears and heavy axemen. I probably wouldn't commit them in if I were Y2K. Meanwhile, over here, still Khazad-Dum hold the bridges, still Dale and Arthedain less interested in an all-out offensive. Again, you could say that's understandable, but to be honest, like, eventually they're going to have to march into the jaws of death over here. Like, Khazad-Dum are not going anywhere. The player is not going to suddenly fall asleep and allow you to march right on into the settlement. You're going to have to deal with the Iron Watch. You're going to have to deal with the Khazad-Dum Reclaimers. You can see over here that some of the routing units that came through were already introduced to the Reclaimers. And of course there's the elite units. The one problem Khazad-Dum may run into is they don't have enough supporting units for all of this, but I don't know. I'd be quite tempted if I were Khazad-Dum, to be honest with you, to go on the offensive here, because a lot of the units are still way across the bridge. The Iron Watch, to be honest with you, represent a real problem for them to deal with on the bridges or in the valley, so it doesn't really matter how you approach it from that perspective. And going on the offensive would also surprise the attackers somewhat, I think. Dunedain Peacekeepers rolling forwards, axes in hand. Khazad-Dum, though, Sons of the Fallen getting ready to move forward. And there's not many of these sentries left. They've been overrun by the tide of Lake Town, the men of Lake Town. Meanwhile, over here on the high ground, Rhun and Riverward's still waiting. And you can see the defenders now pushing back against this incursion, but they've pushed too far. They've delved too deep and too greedily, because now they're going to get overlapped by a combination of Angmar from the front holding them in place and then some high damage Rhudaur units from behind. And this is what I like to see, keeping up the pressure. And they look like they were flagging a little bit for a little bit there, the attackers, but they've managed to sort of recapture their momentum. Axe throwers being utilised to good effect as well. Trollshore axe throwers, a really deadly unit to be used, especially against stuff like Spears of Rivendell. Non-shielded units in general, weak to axe throwers. Blackwolds are on the front line. In terms of skill, they will be outmatched by Imladris, but they are berserkers, so they will not break. Multiple HP as well. I mean, it's AP damage as well, so they will take their pound of flesh off of Imladris. Rhudaur Swordsman victory is a possibility. Imladris continue to fight on the front line, but they are going to be overwhelmed here. Oh, and that was a very fortuitous hit, I think. Well, actually, no, that was mostly friendly fire from the Angmar Catapult. I thought it was square in the middle of the Rhun and Riverwards, but in the end it was not. Most unfortunate for them. But at this point, I think you can be fairly confident in the fact they're not going to use the bridges. Obviously, considering what bridges are and how awkward they can be, it's no surprise most players on TOL FALAS elect to try and go this way. But it is making the battlefield smaller, and if the defenders so choose, they can continue to commit reinforcements over here. The Brotherhood of the Spear and the Riverwards fighting hard on the front line. The Nurad Footmen are also there, adding a bit of AP. Limited usefulness against Rhudaur, to be fair. Brotherhood of the Axe could be really handy, to be honest with you, against stuff like Guardians of Khazad-Dum. Variag Bowmen up on the high ground. Again, much like the Nomadic Infantry, they can be used as makeshift infantry as well. Maybe not to the same extent, but with the armour upgrade, they can be survivable in melee, even if they don't do the most amount of damage. Meanwhile, Lake Town Infantry are routing. Again, more units that will end up routing through these Khazad-Dum reclaimers, who so far haven't had to use any of their projectiles and have just killed effectively defenceless men. Oh, he managed to get through there. Not all of them will be so lucky though. Oof. Nasty, nasty stuff. Legion Bodyguard wanting to get in on the action, perhaps pad their own kill counts out just a little bit. They're not going to be quite so fortunate though. They arrived just a little bit too late for the party. Meanwhile, front line over here, things have gone quiet on the Western Front. Dunedain Peacekeepers just waiting. The dwarves have got all day. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, they've already made a few missteps, I think, Arthedain and Dale, but they can't afford to be so frugal because it's just not going to work. If you were going to skirmish, you should have done it sooner with the Bardian Marksman, I think, because then at least you would have had volume of fire that even Dwarven armour would struggle to deal with. As it is, though, you've played into the Dwarves' hands a little bit by engaging piecemeal and using your ammunition and resources piecemeal. And as a result, Tsunami's defence is held very firm. Dunedain Peacekeepers are moving forward now, but they could be engaged by Sons of the Fallen at any moment, and that's not the situation you want to be in if you are Arthedain. Sons of the Fallen will hold against the axe-wielding line infantry, as much as I like the Dunedain Peacekeepers. There are levels to this. Meanwhile, still the arrows thudding in over here. Angmar will be good at dealing with that. Meanwhile, Etenwall's Shoal Hunters throwing their javelins in. I think most of them, to be fair, though, are impacting with the level geometry, so to speak. The ruins that are up on this hill. Nurad Halberds attempting to be focused down by Rhudaur marksmen, but they're arcing their shots a little bit. They're a depleted unit at this stage, so it is what it is. And they're going to be engaged on the front line here. Rhanadigm pikemen are here, usually really, really good, to be honest, but they're having to fight this battle largely on their own. The attackers need to keep sending units in here, otherwise they could live to regret it. There's a lot of dead Eastron clansmen over here, which could have either been from the cavalry or the archers, to be honest with you. Rhun and Riverwards are there. Etenwall's Shoal Hunters going into melee, as are the Blackwatch Legion. So this is the moment where they're going to try and push through, clearly. They're doing some damage from the low ground with their Rhanadigm Berserkers. And their purpose here is clear. Snaga also adding themselves to the front line. Khan are going to see this and going to add more mass to the front line, Nomadic Infantry, so they are responding. Will it be sufficient? We shall see. Brotherhood of the Shadows are there as well, the assassin unit. Hugely damaging. Atomor's Shoalhunter leaving the front line, which is massively surprising, to be honest with you, because they're the spears. They could be something which would be really useful for stopping the Variac Cataphracts from doing this. That, however, is a brutal hit. Very fortuitous from the Angmar Catapult. You can never quite tell how the Catapult is going to treat you. We saw some friendly fire earlier, but that was a brilliant hit, really, into the centre of this line that was doing very well, actually. But it's going to be a struggle for them from here if that Catapult continues to get hits of that quality. It's going to convince the Brotherhood of the Shadows that they need to start using their throwing knives. At what, though? I'm not sure. More reinforcements heading up here. I think they see the necessity of this. Elder Runway Spearmen on their way. The Hwacha crew was in there. I saw the Hwacha show up, and the actual artillery pieces are down there, so we can infer that it is indeed out of ammunition. Snaga Stalkers, victory seems certain. One thing that I need to keep an eye out for, of course, is the Mighty Witchers. And I assume they're probably still back here. The desire to deliver the final blow with such a unit. Although perhaps not, actually. Most of what we see back here, to be honest, is some runic units that are in reserve. Have the Witchers been committed? Yes, they have. I just saw them loose their volleys toward the Variac Cataphracts, but most of them actually ended up missing. My. Not a devastating volley into a blob as it could have been, but they've killed off a lot of Noritino warriors, so it's better than nothing. Meanwhile, what on earth is that? That is the Iron Watch of Miramir. They've been committed over here. Seeing the passivity of Arthedain and Dale, they've instead elected to come over here, and they are going to do huge damage. So both sides are sort of releasing their super skirmishers, effectively. Angmar's Witchers and Khazad-Dum's Iron Watch. The Iron Watch, however, have done much better so far. And you have to say, the Witchers have missed most of their shots. And the Witchers don't have much ammunition, so most of the damage potential of Angmar's most feared unit is done. They can still reverse that, of course. One volley is all it takes for the Witchers to pay for themselves relatively easily. Which is why I'm watching from on high, because we don't want any crashes. Arrows being traded back and forth. The Broinen Riverwards and the Nurad Stormguard holding on that side. It's a more even fight on the other, however, with the Blackwatch Legion continuing to push. So more units are going to be required to reinforce. Brotherhood of the Bow are on their way up here. I mean, the Brotherhood of the Bow honestly should be heading across these bridges at this point. I know that bridges are awkward to navigate, but it's not that hard ultimately. If you just sort of stretch your unit along the bridge and then move across it, you could finish off all of these archers and stop the annoyance that they've become, because they've probably racked up a decent kill count for themselves at this point. And it's something that with your cavalry you could have avoided. Brotherhood of the Bow would have been ideally placed to engage in that sort of thing. Witches are coming forward once again. The Iron Watch is still here, having already done the business. Variac Bowmen in behind them, ready to do their thing. One of the Witcher volleys did grill a couple of Cataphracts, but you really want the whole unit being gone. Again, largely a miss. They managed to shave off some of the manpower of those Elder Runway Spearmen, but they would have been hoping for far more. That's a decent volley. I mean, to be fair, like, you know, they have cut down the Elder Runway Spearmen by a decent amount at this point, and they are a very expensive unit after all, but the Witchers are known for being capable of slightly more than that. Much like the Iron Watch over here, as they continue to do large damage there. A lot of it is Eastron Clansmen, but you're going to do so much damage, that's the problem. Meanwhile, still, again, like, look at this, Arthedain and Dale dragging their heels terribly, and again, Mevin and Thickdick, they are players that have played the game before, so they can't hide behind the fact that they're newer. And with the Iron Watch of Miramir gone at this point, they really have no excuse. That would have been like a fairly legitimate excuse for how they were, you know, being quite passive here. They're not there anymore. Get in there, muck in. These are so depleted at this point, and yet, you know, it's almost like they're scared of the dwarves. And they've still got the Reclaimers back there. They're not making any progress here, Arthedain and Dale. While their allies, meanwhile, are engaged in a super bloody fight, they're just sort of just taking it easy, which is disappointing to see. Elder Runway Spearmen on the front line now, helping to engage. Arthedain Rangers engaged in melee, presumably after using their ammunition. I would assume not to a super effective extent, but hard to tell with archers like that. They can blend into the background somewhat. Eastron clansmen pushing forward. The only thing really, I mean, the Witchers are in melee now, so they must be out of ammo. Snaga archers also. They're going to overwhelm the Brotherhood of the Axe that are here ultimately, which means the attackers may very well take this high ground, even though the Witchers weren't quite the devastating force they could have been. Cavalry is needing to get out of there. Variag bowmen are marching forward. I think they need to recognise when a position is lost at this point. Yeah, and I think Y2K sees that at this point. Save the men that you can, set up a new defensive position, get the cataphracts out of there, and let these units over here just act as a rear guard, because they will still get an impressive amount of kills, something like the Nurad Storm Guard. You just have to accept that fact. Again, it is what it is. They still have some support from the high ground as well. Variag bowmen continuing to chip away at the attackers' manpower. Nice hit there into that blob. The Horn of Harad, interestingly enough. Meanwhile, yeah, again, like, Khazad-Dum really were the ones that moved onto the bridge to engage. Sentries getting shot up by the Bardian marksmen. Definitely rooting for the dwarves over here, I have to say. As the sentries move forward, 4th Legion Shield Guard fighting evenly with all of these units so far. With the addition of some sentries, depleted or no, that could be enough, to be fair, to tilt this fight in the dwarves' favour. And once again, passive, far too passive. I don't even know what they're waiting for as such. Like, if they were waiting for the Iron Watch to go, they're gone. Like, the Orc Hunters, they're not going to just use their ammunition willy-nilly. Like, the dwarves are not going to be baited at this point, you know this. They're trying to push through, which some forward momentum would certainly not go amiss. Arthedain men-at-arms and Dalian spearmen should be able to overwhelm if they get in and around the formation, which they have. I mean, at this point, if I were the dwarves, I'd just pull back from the bridge. At the very least, it will convince Arthedain and Dale to, you know, march forwards, if nothing else. And then, of course, we can get to the Reclaimer goodness. Meanwhile, over here, they are actually holding this downhill section as the Snaga archers and Eastron clansmen do break. Another unit of Eldarenway spearmen are here. The Witchers, seemingly out of ammunition. You can see here the Nurad Storm Guard. They are completely surrounded and cut off from support, but the fact of the matter is, all of the units that are around them are Eastron clansmen, so they're still doing tons and tons of damage to these lower tier Easterlings. Who was that then? Was that Angmar? Was it Angmar? We should be able to see from the Witchers. Now the Witchers are still fighting. Rhun is still on the front line, so I would assume it's Rhudaur, yeah, Gimli, son of Gloin. He doesn't have anything left, to be fair, nothing important anyway. So I mean, just the fact that, I mean, he should have at least thrown his 49 Rhudaur marksmen into melee, but I mean, to be fair, it's not a match-defining thing, and this is impressive actually. They're pushing forward at this point. The attackers too slow. Rhune's reinforcements are moving now, but they're mobilising too slowly, and as a result, the Khandish cavalry charging in, engaging with the crossbows, and if they can shut down another unit of crossbows, that's another target they won't have to deal with later on. Brotherhood of the Bow being used nicely there, the Variag cataphracts as well. Ride out with me, ride out and meet them. I wonder how you say that in Mongolian. Because that is what is happening here, and Eldarenway moving forward, Nurad Stormguard moving forward, and again, the fact that Rhun were dragging their heels, hoping to keep all of these units safe from harm for so long, has resulted in this problem, and the Catapult is now also being engaged by the Brotherhood of the Bow. They will have to pull back ultimately, but they got a long way there. It can. And they can be very happy with their day's work there. These units, I'd actually given up hope on these units really doing much more in the battle, but they're actually accomplishing a good amount here as they continue to roll forwards. Victory seems certain. What have we got here? The dwarves still fighting on the front line, and I can respect this. Troll Slayers engaging in melee with their axes, so yeah, like the time of the dwarves at holding these bridges is coming to a close, you would have to say. But the Khazad-Dum Reclaimers are coming forward, so I can understand the dwarves doing this. They must have just got so bored with how Dale and Arthedain were approaching this. They were just like, you know what? We're doing this. We're committing our units forward. And there are still Orc Hunters firing away over here as well. So this will give Dale perhaps the opening they were waiting a long time for with their Bardian Marksmen to shoot some good targets, but ultimately they're going to take a ton of damage in response. The Axe Throwers doing massive damage to the Dalian Spearmen. 2nd Legion Axe Guard are going to give them the business in melee as well. Both of the two bridge areas. I mean, actually, the Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, I think, are going after the Dunedain Troll Slayers. A fine target indeed. Several of them will fall. Nice crossfire setup here from the Dwarves of Khazad-Dum, who have quietly been having a very good game, I think. And even if the decision to come forward here out to the bridges ends up being one that does cost him a little bit, again, like, look at this, like, they're moving backwards. It's embarrassing, really, when you look at it like that. But even if they do end up, even if this does end up costing them, I'm not going to hold it against them at all, because at least they're making something happen. The glacial pace that Arthedain and Dale have been moving at in this fight has been poor. I'm going to just put that out there. Been very poor. You're the attackers. There is a certain expectation that you attack. And as soon as the Iron Watch left, that was their signal to move in. The fact that they still didn't is, yeah, not good. Meanwhile, still a few arrows finding their way into this Easterling blob, and you have to say as well that, like, the attack on this side is, it could end up all going horribly, horribly wrong. There's still Norotino warriors firing away. The front line at this point, Brotherhood of the Shadows are there, Elder Renway Spearmen are there, Nurad Footmen. There's still what remains of the Storm Guard. There's still 27 of them, which is still a significant amount. They're a very good unit, are the Nurad Storm Guard. And they're continuing to have an impact. A lot of these more basic Eastlings, I mean, they're a flag room on the front line now. They're up to a little bit more than the Eastron Clansmen. Forward comes some Snaga, maybe not the heroes that this front line was hoping for. They're running out of steam over here, you have to say. Cummel's chosen, there's the Witch Realm Inquisitors again. The Inquisitors, the opportunity is there now for them to walk through the stakes, get across the bridge. I mean, to be fair though, like, there's still units over there, there's still Brotherhood of the Sword, so you have to say, been a bit back and forth, but over the long haul here, Imladris and Khan have really been quite dominant in this fight for the hill. And now Rhun are coming forward with what they have remaining. I think at this point, Angmar are going on a bit of a suicide mission, trying to get in behind the line, try and cause some disruption. I mean, it's better than doing nothing, I have to say, from 9 recurring. The Catapult is also somewhat getting in the way of both sides, but that may actually help defenders more so than anything else. I mean, here, the Witch Realm Inquisitors, if they get caught on something like the Elder Renway Spears, or especially the Nurad Storm Guard, they're getting dusted pretty quickly. There's still a little bit in reserve for Rhun, including some javelins and some crossbows, which could still yet turn this around. But I think they smell blood in the water here, the defenders, because the Gwaith Arthand are moving forward. A sign that they intend to hold this position indefinitely, really. And this, of course, means the clock is really ticking for Arthedain and Dale at this point. I mean, if I were Khazad-Dum, seeing how dominant my allies were on the other side, I'd be like, full attack, full offensive. I'm gonna fill my boots in terms of kills, even if I end up losing ultimately to Arthedain and Dale, which I honestly find difficult to see at this point with the elites that they still have there. Legion Bodyguard, Khazad-Dum Reclaimers are good in melee as well. Khazad-Dum do need to be a little bit more on their feet than this, though. You can't afford to park right in front of armour-piercing archers like this, but at least it's to a purpose. They're firing their throwing axes in. They're going to be able to do some good damage here to the Blackshot Dragon Slayers because of the base damage. Blackshot Dragon Slayers, multiple HP, very good armour as well, but ultimately they are unshielded. Dalian Royal Guard here as well. Do they have armour-piercing arrows as well? That would be bizarre. They've got black trails. I know they've got some sort of special projectile now, but I'm not sure what it is. Bardian Marksmen are there. Meanwhile, 2nd Legion Axe Guard just giving the Bardian Marksmen the business on the front line here. And Barlin's crew has been unmoving over on this side. To be fair, the same could also be said over on this side for Imladris and Khan. There's been a little bit more back and forth. The fight actually was over here initially between that unit of Swords of Rivendell before it got pushed back to here. Then the attackers pushed it back further to here and here, but since then they've run out of steam, really. To keep that assault going, I think they needed their witches to be positioned a little bit better, but they also needed Rhun to be a little bit more proactive. They needed more runic units on the front line earlier. Again, I think the Witch Realm Inquisitors made this mistake previously. Yeah, and there's only 9 of them remaining, so I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest with you, that Imladris are doing exactly the same thing, when they could, of course, be going across the bridges. Like, that's something that I would say the defenders, Khan and Imladris, could have improved a lot. They could have used the bridges at this point. There's really no excuse for it, and in fact, he has. I take it back. Y2K knows what he's doing after all. If for no other reason, then yes, he's going to have the rear charging blocked by the Scion Rim, but this means the Scion Rim can't go on the front line, and they're going to be such an important unit to have on the front line. I think victory is a distinct possibility. Now the Javelins are in here, you can see that with the support, Rhun is starting to have more of an impact. If it came down to just a test of strength at arms, yeah, there goes 9 recurring. The Angmar army finished. The Elder Runway Lance actually do manage to push through to a certain extent, interrupting the tribesmen, so it was worthwhile in the end, because it will give them a chance to make this all about melee prowess once more, and if it comes down to that, the Easterlings are not going to win this at all. But with those crossbows and javelins, there is still hope for Rhun, but it's looking like a pretty hairy situation, to be honest with you. More Veriag Bowmen and Norotino warriors arriving in support. More meat for the grinder, as we are into the final 10k frames, the final moments in the battle. Still 10% the differential. The attackers should come back further into it, you would have to say, but will they? I'm not so sure. Guardian Marksman. Again, like, I can't disagree more with how Arthedain and Dale have approached this battle, to be honest with you. They played into the dwarves' hands at every opportunity. They've been so passive, as I've said before. I'm going to stop mentioning it, to be honest with you, because it's been said before, but the dwarves are winning still, with really isolated pockets of infantry. If you're winning on the front line with only 31 units, something has gone horribly wrong from the attacking point of view. And yeah, not good. The Iron Watch and Miramir are back over here now. I don't think they have ammunition, or at least if they do, it's a very limited amount. The Orc Hunters are out of ammo as well, so they can be committed to melee more freely because they're not as important to the dwarven efforts. Meanwhile, the Legion Bodyguard are coming forward. They're taking damage from the black shots, but if they get close into melee, it's going to be difficult to hit them. The Keldrin River Patrol as well, they're still trying to skirmish. The dwarves are very slowly moving across the bridges, you have to say, but Guardian Marksmen are going to get absolutely dusted by Legion Bodyguard. What have we got going on over here? Keldrin River Patrol. Khazad-Dum Reclaimers moving forward. Going to reinforce this isolated pocket of infantry. Fornoster Knights are here. Again, though, they're all on their own, the Fornoster Knights, whereas there are several dwarven units here, including the AP from those Reclaimers. Not going to be a fun time for the Men of the North. It seems when Arthedain and Dale were conquered by evil, their tactical sense left them as well. Oof, what on earth happened here? They're getting shot by something. What are they getting shot for? Elder Runway Archers. Yeah, so they've been kept in reserve. They've still got all their ammunition. They were getting shot in the back as well, so they're heavily armoured, the Scion Rim, but without the shield value from the front, something like the Elder Runway Archers is going to do enormous damage to you. The very best. And now, with the Scion Rim off the front line, this is the moment that Y2K has been waiting for. He's going to slam into the back of all of these skirmishers here. And this is probably going to be the end of Rhun. It should be anyway. There are very cataphracts in there. They're going to slice through all of these units from the front. They're still doing their best. They're fighting evenly now in melee, but with more units yet to be committed. And of course, it's not going to be even for long, as these Eastron crossbowmen are going to be cut down by the Brotherhood of the Bow and the Veriag Cataphracts. And it seems the Blue Wizards could be the saviour of the what remains of the Free People of Middle-earth, because this battle is looking more and more like it's going to be a defensive victory. Units coming down from the hill, and yeah, I mean, like, there's no need to fall back to the hills in the interior of TOL FALAS at this point. On the attack is what I would recommend. And you can tell that because Brotherhood of the Sword are being sent over here. They already know that Rhun have done out here. Of Gwythi Myrdain are over here as well, so yeah, like, at this point, Arthedain and Dale, the dwarves are going to allow them to come forward at this point, but at what cost? I mean, the God Helene are here now as well. Like, it's a disaster of epic proportions. They've been waiting for the ideal opportunity, and in the end, they're going to be presented with a position they're just not going to be able to get through. They've got the quality of Imladris and Khazad-Dum on the front line. They're going to have Brotherhood units from Khand as well. It's a grisly situation. Cavalry, cycle charging in and out. They're going to get these Eastron crossmen out of the way momentarily. Scimitar to scimitar on the front line. I think there's still a few Stormguard. Still quite a few Stormguard actually. Still 44. Oh no, that's a new unit of Stormguard, so he must have had 2. Understandable, because he is the defender after all. But with another unit of Stormguard here, oof. Yeah, it's nasty when a unit of Knights rear charges you like that. The Horse Archers will have much less of an impact, but if you just go one by one, as Y2K is doing here, it's already all over, really. Again, the difference between the charges is fairly significant, but the mass of cavalry will do a lot of the work for you, as it is shown to be there. Baltroth tribesmen getting trampled into the dirt. There's the Runic General in there, you can see him in the middle of all this. The Carmel's chosen doing their best, and actually, you know, they're fighting hard here, the Easterlings. It's not going to matter ultimately, the cavalry will be enough. I'm not sure what Y2K is doing there though. You're not going to be able to get a good charge onto the core of the infantry, to be honest with you. You may as well just keep cycle charging as you were. Don't throw this away now. That would be most unfortunate. And they're just getting into melee at this point, which is questionable. Yeah, you can see the Brotherhood of the Bow doing the business there against the tribesmen. And you don't need to worry ultimately. I think already you've got enough to indefinitely hold the Dalians at bay and Arthedain. Still got some pikes, which, you know, the pikes, well, I mean, no, they're not going to be a problem at all, are they? There are Imladris sentries over here. Again, levels that Arthedain and Dale will not be able to match, and they're still really just trundling forwards at a snail's pace. All the while the Easterlings are getting slaughtered by the cavalry. That's a little bit more like it. A charge which connects, and that is going to be enough to break what remains of the Baltroth tribesmen. There's actually an elfin behind the lines over here, one of the Noraturno warriors. Victory is still a distinct possibility for the Easterlings, so the Carmel's chosen the Scion Rim, proving their worth in melee, but it's not going to matter at the end of the day when the Lancers come down and a good 20 of them are killed. And that was a decent connection there. And the doom of the Easterlings is upon us. As the rain comes down. There goes 6 of the Noraturno warriors just enjoying themselves. Flag rim are routing. Lances down. That's exactly what you want to see when you're commanding your cavalry. There are still spears in there, so the knights could ultimately end up taking a bit of damage, but at this point they've dealt the critical blow. And Rhun are finished. The attackers just haven't quite managed to coordinate well enough. There's the obvious problem of Arthedain and Dale being far too slow on the other side, but also over here, intermittent pushes between Angmar and Rhudaur. Rhun maybe lagging a little bit further behind, keeping their stuff in reserve. There's nothing wrong with that, but when the time came, they needed more on the front line, and Rhun were just a little bit too far away. And ultimately, this was a big difference maker, because there's not much on the front line left over here, you have to say. They could have committed a bit more in Imladris and Khand, but that would have left no reinforcements for Khazad-Dum on the other side, which could have had a knock-on effect. So again, it is small margins that these battles are always decided by, really. And all of those margins on this occasion favoured the defenders. The defenders played very well. They organised themselves very well, and they are very good value for the win here. 3v5s are always a big challenge for the defenders to win, as we saw last time in Fingolfin's last stand. But on this occasion, I think the attackers also did the defenders a lot of favours as well. Definitely room for improvement there. As we see the end of the Easterlings, Carmel's shows. Are we seeing an attack over here at this point? Perhaps? Yes, we are. Dale using their daily and Royal Guard, shooting into the Imladris sentries, to be fair, but there's 2 whole units of them that never got committed. Eldarenway archers butchering Keldrin Root Patrol. Barding Herd are in melee as well. They're still just sending forward their more basic units. They're still not sending forward their showstoppers. Khazad-Dum. I mean, if I were them, I would just come forward and attack at this point. Just give them the business. Show them the might that you still have at your disposal from a defending point of view. Come Arthedain and Dale now, but I mean they've still got some decent units to be fair. Barding Herd, they've still got quite a few pikes, including the Gate Guards. Wardens of the North are in there. More Imladris sentries. The Dwarves probably will actually end up with the least amount of kills at this point, simply because they weren't able to kill off their targets because of Arthedain and Dale sitting back, but also now most of the lion's share of the work, you have to say, is being done by Imladris on this front line, adding to their kill count from the other side, so it wouldn't surprise me if Filler got a large proportion of the kills in this battle, to be honest with you. Yeah, the Blackshot Dragon Slayers at this point are being shot by something from on high. What is that? Nothing, actually. What are they getting shot by? Oh, it must be the God Helene. Yep, so now counter-skirmishing. Victory seems certain for Imladris again. The pike discrepancy is real. Some dwarves getting in behind the lines, the Orc Hunters. They will probably lose this fight, to be honest with you, but they're just disrupting Dale and Arthedain just that little bit more. The attackers, in a 5v3, the attackers always start as the favourites as well, so they can really have no excuse that this ended the way it did. The Iron Watch are scary, but the Iron Watch weren't always here. So either they weren't paying attention over here for the right moment to attack, or they saw the Iron Watch go and they still held back. I'll leave it up to you to decide which one is worse. Forward comes the Brotherhood of the Sword, yeah, at this point. They're there for the taking. Just send forward your elites and squash them underfoot. They're probably going to have a really low amount of kills as well, Dale and Arthedain. You can't read too much into that when you're the attackers, but on this occasion I think it's indicative of the way they actually set themselves up. Brotherhood of the Sword adding themselves to the front line as well, pulling out their dual scimitars. That's pretty much the only thing Khand have left, to be honest with you, aside from their cav. Meanwhile, Easterling's still fighting over here. Yeah, the Easterling General is still alive, to be fair. Are they going to just leave him be? Or are they going to allow the... are they going to charge into him with the cav? Need to put him out of his misery here. I mean, to be fair, Brotherhood of the Shadows might be enough to finish him. No. The cav is just going to let him be. Look at this general, look at this hero. As he duels with this man who's wielding rather interesting looking blades. Yeah, there he goes, like the general proving his worth.
Only half the enemy force remains between us and victory.
What is he going to do now then? He's just going to stand here amongst the bodies of his comrades? Perhaps. Meanwhile, Daily and Royal Guard repositioning themselves. Like, even now, why are these guys not on the front line? What purpose are they serving, trundling around back here doing absolutely nothing? Yeah, a very disappointing display from Arthedain and Dale. I can't really sugarcoat it. They've played badly. Guards of Khazad-Dum, they're obviously going to rip their way through Barding Herd. Halberds or no, Mithril Guard are on the front line as well. So it really is just a matter of seeing this through to its natural conclusion at this stage. And it's lunchtime and I am pretty hungry, I have to say. I'm going to fix myself up some noodles after this, I think. Blackshots still have ammunition, but that's not going to help them at all as their front line completely crumbles in the face of the finest units of all three of the factions. They do manage to get one final volley off into the Brotherhood of the Sword before being engaged in melee, but now... Well, they're actually going to continue to fire, but that will of course mean they're not really defending themselves adequately in melee from the swords that are coming their way. Finally, the Gate Guards are committed to melee a weirdly long time after they really should have been. What's going on over here still? Easterling General remains alive. Again, he is just sort of shell-shocked, perhaps, that he's the only one left after his entire army was vanquished by a nice counter-attack by Imladris and Khand. And all of the defenders deserve a lot of credit, I think, for the way they set the table today. Worthy winners indeed. Wifey Mirdain are in here. They're going to be cracking some Anuminas skulls. Indeed, they ended up routing very quickly, because again, there was nothing to support them. There was nothing to support them when they were committed. I mean, at that point, all hope was lost, but I mean, you may as well at least try to put up some sort of front line. Keldrin Patrol taking a few hits from the god Helene. Naturally, they're not going to be withstanding much more punishment at all. What are these cavalry units going to be going after? There's really nothing to truly go after. I mean, the Wardens of the North are going to get charged. Nice from the Cataphracts. The Brotherhood of the Bow are going to do the same to the Daily and Royal Guard. A similar unit in many ways now, albeit one is more focused on armour. The Dalian variety. Eldrin Way Archers still very much alive. Wifey Mirdain just hanging out. I think Rhun are honestly going to last longer at this point, because there's no way. Rhun Patrol are gone. Wardens of the North are dead. Daily and Royal Guard are here. Is this guy? Yeah, there he goes. He does admit defeat. So in the end, he isn't the last one left standing. I guess because he knew that they would just end up getting charged by cavalry in a couple of minutes. So Dale are the last ones left standing. So at least the speed of play earned them that. No, actually, are they? What's left then? Something on this bridge is what's left. Well, no, it is still Dale, I suppose. So, yeah. Vardian marksman facing off against the Brotherhood of the Bow. Ooh, captured as well. Well, indeed. Nothing more humiliating than that. In come the Brotherhood of the Sword as well. The Brotherhood units combining. I think the Axe and Spear Brotherhood units are long dead. And there goes the Dale General. Both of them captured as well, which is quite interesting. Their shame is truly complete. And a good victory for the defenders, one that they thoroughly earned. And there they go.
Our enemy is no more. We have won a clear victory.
Yes, indeed. A nice victory indeed. Two big epicenters of the conflict, one for the hill, one for the bridges, which, to be fair, TOL FALAS has sort of developed into that meta now. There really isn't too much in the way of variety on this map anymore, which may very well mean that we have plumbed the depths of what is possible on TOL FALAS, which is kind of sad because I do like this map, but I think it's quite clear that much in the same way as Merlond, the defenders have figured out the most efficient way to dig in, and that's all we're ever really going to see from TOL FALAS in the future, which is a little bit disappointing perhaps, but we've shown it several times at this point, so you know there can't be too much that can be said for that. But the next time we see TOL FALAS will be a long time in the future, I think, so this might be the last time we see the triple bridges on both sides for a little while. But yes, Y2K actually getting the most amount of kills. Yeah, Arthedain and Dale getting relatively few. Rhun, getting fewer still, and Angmar actually. Yeah, the attackers struggled on this occasion, but I think the ones trying to take the hill at least made a play of it, and I think the difference could have been just one nice Witcher volley, and that could have turned the whole thing around. Also, if Rhudaur were a little bit closer, they could have kept that attack going, maybe kept the defenders on the back foot, but the defenders weren't content to abandon that position. They were bold, and it ended up paying off. So, yeah, big thank you to Y2K for sending this one in, and a big thank you to all of the players for being a part of this one. Let's go ahead and see what did the damage for Khand. 2 units of Stormguard, one of them doing exceptionally on the front line at 371, the other one committed later, so they got fewer. Brotherhood of the Spear holding the line nicely, Brotherhood of the Axe using their AP to brutal effect against especially Angmar, I would imagine, and the 2 units of Brotherhood of the Sword, differing fates for them. Footmen, very good at holding the line, Halberds much the same. I imagine for the Nurad units they were more of a foil to the Imladris quality that was around them. but quite naturally, I think. The cavalry was the real showstopper here. Brotherhood of the Bow getting 432 kills, a result of them using their archer ammunition like traditional archers first and foremost on the hills. They got a good amount of kills there, and then later on, of course, they were doing the classic cavalry thing of engaging in some hammer and anvil charges, and that was definitely to their great credit. The Hwacha getting a good amount of kills, setting the precedent early on. Variag Bowman doing well. Nomadic Infantry actually did worse, but I imagine that was because they were on the front line first and foremost, so it was what it was. And the Cataphracts getting 304 kills, obviously less than the Brotherhood of the Bow because they didn't have their ranged attack, but they still did very well as the battle wore on. So yeah, unsurprising. Brotherhood units, Nurads, and the cavalry and the archers, all elements, to be honest, of his army did pretty well, to be honest. Very good performance, I have to say, from the defenders overall, not just from Y2K. Yeah, big thank you to him for sending this one in. As I said, I've reached the end of this backlog at this point. I do have another TOL FALAS battle replay, actually, like I said, but obviously, like I just said here at the end as well, it's going to be a long time before we see TOL FALAS again, I think, unless someone, well, I say that, like, normally I don't do the same map in quick succession anyway, because I think it gets a little bit stale if we do it that way. But like I said, I think TOL FALAS we're going to be sort of giving this map a lot of room to breathe in much the same way as Merlond, to be honest with you. This was a more entertaining match than the one on Merlond, I have to say, but even so, it's still much the same as TOL FALAS often ends up being now. So give the map time to breathe, I think, and we won't be seeing that one for quite a while. But yeah, we've come to the end of my backlog as it stands, and part of that is because I've been sort of recording them in quick succession, so that is worth bearing in mind. But always on the lookout for new replays, like I say. So the next batch of recording will probably be happening once university has gotten underway, so I will need to sort of hash out a better schedule for recording than just sort of trying to do them in great big chunks or just doing them one by one when term is underway. So yeah, like I said, always on the lookout for more replays. If you think that there's a replay that I would enjoy, do send it to me in the Discord DMs, because, like I said, always on the lookout for more, because that is the lifeblood of the channel, to be fair. Even if I were to just showcase all the battles that I'm involved in, the channel would be not able to post at the rate that it does, certainly. There would have to be a cutback, which I don't want, certainly. I've no doubt that there will be more replays in the coming 3 to 4 weeks, which is what I've recorded in advance of now. So I'm not overly concerned about that sort of thing. But still, Discord DMs are the place to be for that. If you're not joining either Discord as well, like the Reforged one, the Silmarillion one, there are a few more as well that you can join as well, which I would highly recommend, because if you want to get involved in the communities, then that is the best way, by far the best way really, to go about doing it. But yeah, big thank you to Y2K and all the players once again. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.